Home to many tiny family farms, southern Georgia has always been one of the poorest parts of the state. But the small town of Plains, population 600, was booming in 1924. That was the year James Earl Carter Jr., who would be called Jimmy, was born, in the hospital where his mother worked as a nurse. Jimmy's father ran the town's general store. When Jimmy was 4 years old, his family left Plains and moved to the nearby town of Archery. There, his father, James Earl Carter, who went by his middle name, owned a small farm where he grew cotton, peanuts, and sugarcane. Earl and his wife, Lillian, eventually had 3 more children, Gloria, Ruth, and William, called Billy. While Earl was a successful farmer, the Carters were not a wealthy family by any means. They had to pump their own water from a well, had no electricity, and had to go outside to use the bathroom. The open-air privy was just a hole cut into a plank of wood. For toilet paper, they used old newspapers. Farm work kept Jimmy busy from sunup to sundown. Every day, his father paid him 25 cents to feed the hogs, trim the watermelon plants, and mop the cotton. An especially disgusting job in which he smeared the cotton plants with a gooey, bug-killing potion made from arsenic, a type of poison, molasses, and water. This homemade insecticide was so sweet-smelling that it attracted swarms of flies and honeybees, which followed Jimmy up and down the rows of cotton. By the end of a long day in the fields, Jimmy's pants were so damp with poison that they actually stood up by themselves when he took them off. As tough as farm work was, Jimmy liked the money he made doing it. When he was 5, he hit upon his own scheme for putting a few extra coins in his pocket. Peanuts grew in abundance on his father's farm. Boiled peanuts were a popular snack in downtown Plains. In the afternoons, after his chores were done, Jimmy would head out into the field dragging an empty wagon behind him. He would pull handfuls of peanuts out of the ground, load them into the wagon, and take them back to the yard to wash and soak them in salted water. The next morning, he would get up extra early, boil the peanuts, and pack them into tiny bags. He took them into town and sold them for a nickel a bag. In this way, Jimmy learned the value of hard work and the importance of peanuts. They were 2 lessons he would never forget. Life was not all farm work for Jimmy. In elementary school, he was known as an obedient, well-behaved, and hard-working student. In the 3rd grade, he won a class prize for reading the most books. He attended Sunday school every weekend, memorized Bible verses, and attended church services regularly. However, he got into his share of mischief as well. He once convinced his sister Gloria to bury a nickel in the ground, telling her it would grow into a money tree. When she wasn't looking, Jimmy dug up the nickel and pocketed it for himself. Another time, Jimmy and his friends hitched one of the family billy goats, old Gene Talmadge, named after the governor of Georgia, to a go-kart and made him pull them around the yard. On another occasion, Jimmy tried to ride the goat like a bronco, and they both ran head-on into a barbed wire fence. When he wasn't working, going to school, or getting into trouble, Jimmy spent much of his time outdoors. He loved to go possum hunting with his father. He became known as one of the best tree climbers in the town of Archery. His favorite thing to do, though, was collect arrowheads. There were thousands of them in the woods around Archery, left behind by the Native Americans who had once lived in this part of Georgia. On rainy days when they could not work in the fields, or in winter when the fields were plowed up, Jimmy and his father would hike the land, gathering up the arrowheads. Sometimes they competed with each other to see who could find the most interesting ones. Eventually, Jimmy had a collection of about 2,000 points, as he called them, which he always kept. It was a fun hobby, but also a reminder of how much Georgia had changed over the years since Native Americans had lived on this land. As Jimmy would soon learn, there was another group of Americans who also had strong ties to this part of the country and who would one day change the face of Georgia and the nation for the better.